Throughout history, the Church has been an agent of proclamation. It has been about spreading the message, or good news, of Jesus Christ. For close to 2,000 years, the Church has benefited from various charismatic leaders speaking in public forums, delivering the message with the intention of creating converts to Christ. In the West, the effectiveness of evangelism has ebbed and flowed over the years. There have been seasons of great passion and effectiveness, followed by seasons of dryness and lethargy. America has experienced many such movements. In the early 1700s, the Great Awakening spread throughout colonial America like wildfire. Churches with a normal attendance of 40 swelled to over 250 almost overnight. Fiery preaching to crowds of all sizes characterized this period. The hellfire and brimstone, scathing preaching idea found its beginning in this revival. In the early 1800s, another movement erupted in north-central Kentucky that came to be known as the Cane Ridge Revival. Again, many people were converted to Christianity through an individual declaration of the message to the mass gathering. Around the turn of the 20th century, the modern Pentecostal movement started with the reemergence of the biblical spiritual gifts, tongues, and divine healing. These signs were accompanied by the declaration of the message of the gospel, often authenticating the message with action. Since that time, preaching accompanying with power phenomenon has spread throughout the globe, making Pentecostalism the world's fastest-growing expression of Christianity. In the late 60s and 70s, a fast-growing evangelistic movement sprang up among the hippie flower child, which later became known as the Jesus movement. Once again, it was through verbal communication to crowds of people that characterized the method of expansion of the Christian message. In the past 30 years, a movement has arisen in America that's quite different from the former movements in methodology, principles, and paradigms, but alike in purpose. The Seeker movement began in 1975 when a young pastor, a former businessman named Bill Hybels, decided to informally survey Chicagoland suburbanites and ask them why they were not going to church. He and his young team of followers surmised from their findings that the unchurched people wanted God, but traditional expressions of church were irrelevant to their modern lives. As a transformational leader, Hybels, with his charismatic qualities, which included force of personality, spoken words, and a dynamic presentation style, was able to profoundly affect and inspire others to join in a new way of doing church. Church was started in a local cinema. The service was designed to appeal to the needs of seekers, rather than the normal church-goer. Instead of 3 hymns, an offering song, and a Bible-based sermon, they employed drama, multimedia, arts, and contemporary performed music, all centered around a topical how-to message. The results were almost an overnight success. Streams of people who had never been to church began flocking to Willow Creek Community Church. In years to come, the Seeker movement would grow and spread wildly across America. As a result of this high-performance presentation style that was required on Sunday mornings, Hybels' transformational leadership style was dependent on engaging a team of individuals around him, creating a following of highly committed, motivated, talented people, also committed to this idea. As is typical with transformational leaders, Hybels' inspirational leadership style articulated an appealing vision of the future. It challenged followers with a high standard and talked optimistically with enthusiasm and provided the encouragement and meaning for what needed to be done. The principles Hybels utilized involved reaching the unchurched people by discovering how they thought, what they liked, what was important to them, and why. Once this was discovered, the gospel message was programmed into a way that the hearer and seer would receive it. This seeker-driven model was unlike any former model of communicating the gospel. The focus was not on simply proclaiming the gospel in an unapologetic manner, but rather it became about presenting the gospel in a seeker-sensitive way. The demands, however, exacted on the followers trying to duplicate this method involved recruiting a team to produce professional quality programming on a weekly basis, keeping a creative edge while upholding the message of Christ without compromise, and moving spiritual seekers from an entertainment-based production into a growing discipleship mindset and process in order to become committed Christians, not simply consumers of quality programming. And finally, to move spiritual seekers from an event-based production into a committed Christian community of believers. While on the outside, this may not seem like a revolutionary idea, on the inside, to the traditional evangelical paradigm, this method sent huge waves of alarm throughout much of the Christian church community at large. The seeker-driven model was accused of adopting a Madison Avenue technique, which involved marketing and entertainment. It was criticized on the theological level as dumbing down the gospel and offending the scriptures. Much criticism was leveled at both Hybels and the church for caring more about the presentation rather than the message. In response, however, thousands of people were coming to Christ, and the traditional church culture had been greatly changed as a result of this seeker-driven movement that had occurred. As with all movements, with the passage of time, it is possible to look back and evaluate both the leader and the leadership style involved in propelling the movement. As any effective leader would do, Hybels would be the first one to critique and evaluate the effectiveness of this style. While he agreed that the method did produce high numbers in terms of converts, the net goal was not to produce simply consumers of religion. Rather, the message of the gospel was to create disciples of Jesus Christ. And while the seeker movement has produced thousands of legitimate disciples affecting people all around the globe, the method of maintaining a high-level performance-oriented presentation of the gospel cannot be duplicated by many other leaders, since it's highly dependent on the personality and character of Hybels and his team itself. Many have tried to implement the techniques and succeeded, but many more have died out, trying with good intention to replicate something that was personality-driven. Going back to the original definition of social movements, Hybels and the seeker-driven model absolutely qualify as a significant movement within the church's history by demonstrating a deliberate, organized attempt to achieve change, while over time becoming a social movement that gained new members, set goals, and developed leadership structures until eventually they did bring change.